has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch Michael Bizer.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, 27-year veteran of the NYPD. You know, guys, sometimes in this 24-hour news cycle, things can break at any time, and multiple things. And sure enough, yesterday at 1:30 in the afternoon, I covered the press conference of Asa Ellerup and, of course, Victoria Heuermann and Christopher Sheridan, her two children, in regards to their father, Rex Heuermann. And even after that press conference, some other breaking news did occur. And I'm going to get into that later on today. We're going to do a comprehensive report on that. But also my buddy, good friend of mine, NYPD Detective Duty Ron, made a special trip today to Gilgo to bring you some great coverage of what it looks like and where all the happenings were in regards to this area. And, you know, when I was a kid, I stayed on an island very close to Gilgo, actually closer to Jones Beach. It's called Short Beach, and it's near the Coast Guard station. And my buddies and I, we stayed on this island. And during the night, we fled. We jumped in the boat and got the hell out of there because we were getting attacked by mosquitoes. Literally, like the bites hurt so much that we fled the island. And somewhat that's what happened today to Duty Ron and his buddy doing great coverage. They couldn't take it. They were getting attacked. I guess it was a muggy day, and eventually it rained. But I'm going to show you some of their footage. And this is, of course, with permission from my buddy Duty Ron, retired NYPD detective. Let me put it up on the screen there.
To do it by himself, and I'll tell you why. Because he has to jump off his little vessel, boat. He's got to, excuse me for the description that I'm going to make right now. He's got to drag the individual across at least, I would say, in my opinion, probably 100 yards, 150 yards. Now,
what they're talking about here is there was a lot of people that thought Rex Heuermann perhaps took a duck boat across the bay, and on the other side of all that brush you see, landed with his boat and then dragged the bodies to this location off the highway in Gilgo. And he's talking about how improbable that is.
I'm going to tell you, this is all marshland. And what that means is that the heavier you are, you're going to sink like quicksand. So not only was this guy 6'6" and 290 pounds approximately, there's no way that he was going to do that. So that's my opinion. That's a great perspective. That what I see, I'm live right here looking at all this. So that's not going to happen. This guy, in my opinion, drove over here, right, Duty Ron?
With the car, yes. And again, for him to come, beach his boat there and then walk up would be literally, it would be a really tough feat. And we got to keep walking because I'm getting eaten alive.
So here, let me give you guys a perspective right here. Watch this.
So you're getting an idea he's getting eaten alive right now.
Right? I'm going to pan to my left. Watch this. I'm going to show you how much closer it is to pull over with your vehicle.
Remember, this whole walkway was all dirt. You can come on it.
This is all dirt. This walkway wasn't here at the time of the...
and the guardrail wasn't.
Right, and the guardrail wasn't here at the time of the murders. But here, this was here, which is the highway right here. This is the highway. Okay? So let's go back and meet up with Duty Ron. So that's, I mean, we're here live. We see it with our own eyes. There's no way. So what do you guys think? Do you think, you know, what's your theory as far as how he put these bodies over here? Do you think, put a 1 in the chat if you think he came by boat, or put 2 in the chat if you think he drove here with the poor victims.
You know, folks, another thing that I don't know if they mentioned was that, of course, Duty Ron believes that he drove from Massapequa. Now, on Ocean Parkway, you would be heading in an easterly direction, and he would have to, at some point, turn back around and head west in order to be on the bay side, which was where the bodies were found and dumped. So as you can see right now, there's a rail there. That wasn't there, and nor was this little bicycle path, because this would have been 2010. So none of those things were there, but he would have still had to have been heading east and somewhere do a U-turn and come back heading west in order to be on the westbound side of the bay side of this road.
Oh, exactly, Mystique. Exactly. Right. In the meantime, Duty Ron and I are getting bit up over here. Okay.
It's like they're on a safari.
I'm getting eaten alive.
So walking on the path.
Holy shit.
Yeah, we're getting, I couldn't imagine coming here in the evening at night.
You know, folks, as they're talking about this, I mentioned I stayed on an island near there when I was a kid. And it is no joke. These mosquitoes are like, they like drill into your leg, into your arms, into your back. Some of them, if you get those horseshoe flies, they'll actually bite right through your pants, right through your shirt. It's unbelievably painful.
It would be pretty bad.
I should have sprayed bug spray on me. All right, so we're coming in between Coast Guard Cove and Hemlock Cove. And in the distance is Hemlock Cove. Joey, I'm not sure if we're going to make it all the way down there because we're definitely getting eaten alive. That's for sure.
You know what?
But,
walk over here, Ron.
Okay.
Walk on the other side. Don't walk near over here. Right, stay over here.
it's less?
It's less.
Okay.
Sure, there's nothing here.
There's still, oh, man.
You should have alcohol just.
I know. Hey,
We're
this
gonna
is what
make
we
it.
do for our people.
You see? Hold on. You see that, guys? We're here. We're doing God's work right now. We're helping out the situation, and we're trying to bring you a part of this situation with us right now. Okay,
Let's not get run over by bicycles. We got to stay to the left.
They have
I mean, to the
dual
right.
hazards. They have bicyclists and they got mosquitoes. They got to watch out for the cars. So it's not without dangers. They faced the danger in order to bring this unbelievable terrain to show you what this area was like.
My God. All right. Who's in the chat, Joey?
Okay, so we got Dr. Edward Moskowitz.
Hey, Doc.
We got Sarah Oakley. We got Judy. We got Dormery, our mod.
This is, of course, playing from Duty Ron's show earlier this morning. I believe he started at around 11:30. He told me he was going out there. And I bet you he wished that he left this for October or November because this case will still be relevant at that time. Cowboy in Saddle, thank you so much for the $5 super stick. I'm going to play a little bit more of this, and then we're going to get to this topic at hand today.
We have, go ahead, guys. Do me a favor, guys. I'm going to give you a shout out. Tell me what location you're from, what town, city. Go ahead, do it. Pittsburgh Strong. There we go. Agatha, you're welcome. Tweety USA News. Yeah, Bugs.
Oh, my God.
I just
stay
Stay in the middle.
stationary.
Stay in the middle.
I just want to
There's
get
a
when
bike
they
coming.
Hello
they
from
flee.
Russia. Welcome. Privyet. It's hot and very sunny. It's about 86 degrees Fahrenheit was the last I checked. Good to see you, Tooth Fairy, Miss Lizard. Wichita, thank you.
My legs are getting bit alive.
We're gonna have to walk. We're gonna have to walk on the highway soon.
Holy shit. All right.
So, guys, you caught the drift. It was actually pretty funny. I mean, I'm glad I wasn't the one that went to the wilds of Gilgo to bring you that, because they were in some pain there, you know. But it's interesting. It gives you a perspective of what it looks like. You can just imagine that location at nighttime, pitch dark. There's virtually no lights. All you would see is the lights of cars. But in the wintertime, there are virtually no cars around. So you multiply that by nighttime, and it's extremely, extremely desolate area. I want to thank Duty Ron for allowing me to share that with you guys. I know a lot of you guys watched that this morning. One of the things I want to talk about, and yesterday we were talking about the press conference, and I believe the attorney's name was Robert Macedonio, and there's another attorney named Ves Mitev. Robert Macedonio is the attorney for Essa Ellerup, who is Rex Heuermann's wife, of course. And now, look, there's a lot. He outlines a lot of things that have occurred. And of course, the gist of this is that the police, during the search warrant and executing the search warrant, destroyed the house, left it a mess, and all this other stuff, left the tub and the pipes not working, a lot of stuff. But he also let out that Essa Ellerup is also suffering from breast cancer. So look, it's impossible for any human being not to feel for this family. But at the same time, and I'm not saying don't feel bad for this family, please do. Their father is an alleged serial killer. So I think what takes precedent here, in my opinion, is the search warrant that was issued by a judge to recover evidence, any kind of evidence that would link Rex Heuermann to the victims, or possibly to victims who have yet to be found out yet. So that is really what from a law enforcement perspective. And folks, I just want to break it to everyone. Law enforcement never cleans up after a search warrant is executed. So I don't know if some of you guys would like legislation that law enforcement must call the happy maids in after they're done. But at this juncture, I don't know of any jurisdiction on this earth that requires law enforcement to clean up after they're done with a search warrant. Unfortunately, it's not the best press for the police department. However, when Rodney Harrison, the police commissioner of Suffolk County, was interviewed, he indicated that the house was extremely cluttered before they even began the search. I will guarantee you, and I will guarantee this, that the Suffolk County Police memorialized this search prior to the start of the search, either by video or by still photographs, probably by video, to show the whole house, because of course they would anticipate a lawsuit. So yesterday, the attorneys for Essa Ellerup and her kid, everyone keeps calling them kids. I understand they're both in their 30s. I know the son, Christopher, is a special needs person, and Victoria Heuermann, I believe they're both in their 30s. So I know I've spoken about this before. We always refer to our children, no matter how old they are, as kids, but they're adults. They're adults. And so that doesn't mean we don't have to feel any less sorry for them, but they're not kids. I'm going to play a little bit of the press conference to get a flavor for it, because later on, last night, I think Duty Ron went live last night at about 10:30 or 10:40, because there was breaking news to this. And I'm going to report the same thing and my feelings on it. What does it mean? What does it mean for the investigation? Is the breaking news, is it truthful, or do we disqualify it as not relevant or not credible? Those are some of the things we're going to cover. But first, I'm going to play a little bit of yesterday's press conference in regards to the attorneys for Essa Ellerup and Victoria Heuermann and Christopher Sheridan filing what they refer to as a notice of claim.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming out. I'm Bob Macedonio. I'm the attorney representing Essa Ellerup. As you're all aware, she's the wife of the Gilgo Beach serial killer suspect. On her behalf, she wanted me to express her thanks for the enormous outpouring of support that she's received in the past several weeks. We've gotten gift cards, care packages, food's been delivered to her house. There's also been a GoFundMe page that's been set up on our behalf, which I'd like to clarify some of the issues with that. The GoFundMe page that's been set up is 100% for the benefit of Assa and her children. This law firm or any associations of us, we take no funds from that. She will receive 100% of the funds from that. The GoFundMe page was set up by Melissa Moore, who is the daughter of the serial killer, the Happy Face killer, who in the late 90s was convicted of killing at least 5 sex workers in the Midwest. She was 16 years old when her father was arrested. She reached out immediately to myself. We put her in contact with ASA, and they have started the GoFundMe page. Like I said, 100% of the proceeds from that GoFundMe goes to ASA. At this time, ASA has authorized me to relay to everybody that for the past several years, she's been suffering from cancer. She has breast cancer. She also has skin cancer. She's presently under a course of treatment that's going to continue for the next 12 to 18 months. Now, why I bring that up is because her health insurance is due to expire in the next 60 days. The source of her health insurance was from her husband's employer. He was the employee. So when the funds run out, his business accounts, the health insurance will no longer be available for her to treat the cancer. It's going to be going treatment she needs for the next 18 months. That's the big part of it. We did tour the house on Sunday. I was there with my staff and saw the damage that was done and the mess that was left behind when the police did leave. The drain pipes were taken out of the bathroom. That little elbow piece, the traps were taken out of the bathroom sinks, as well as.
You know, folks, we also spoke upon that. Like, why would the police break into the tub? Why would they go into the traps? Basically, to find forensic evidence, biological evidence. And there's still a potentiality that there could be some, and that's what they searched. Crime scene technicians do this all the time, and they're experts at it. And unfortunately, there's not an easy way to do this without wrecking some things and destroying it. And I'm sure that down the road, and unfortunately, it's not going to happen quickly, that Essa Ellerup and her family will be made whole in regards to fixing their house. But again, I just like to poke some of you back into reality. They're searching the house of a serial killer. All right. So I know we all feel sorry for Essa Ellerup and her children. However, the search for this evidence takes precedent. It has to.
The bathroom tub, so you could not run any of the water. We had a cleanup crew come in with 20-yard dumpsters with 5 men and start removing debris that was left behind. As we speak, photos are being released to all of you through the internet, which you'll have digital photos of the damage that was there. I've also had the opportunity to view the so-called vault or the soundproof room in the basement. It is not a soundproof room. It is not a vault. It is a safe door about 6 foot high that is attached.
You know, folks, that whole thing he's referring to, and that was invented by the press. Unfortunately, the press does invent things all the time, and then they yell at other people for not telling the truth. They invented the fact that there was some soundproof room. That was never reported by the police. What was reported was they had a room like with that had a safe door on it to protect the 200 or more firearms that he had in that room. So it was never reported by the police that he had a soundproof room. That was somehow, enhanced by the press reporting that. So I think this attorney, Robert Macedonio, is just reiterating that information and letting the press know that what they've been reporting is false.
2x4s with an open ceiling in the basement like anybody's basement would be, unfinished inside. That's where the guns were allegedly stored. I also had the opportunity to view this doll that was made mention of by the prosecution or the police department. It's a collectible doll, and again, at some point in time, you have a photo of that Asa has collected for many, many years. It was in a wooden glass case that was there. Again, Asa would like me to express her thanks for the support she's received. She's going through a very difficult time. Emotionally, she's recovering each day, not only dealing with the cancer, but this newfound life that she has to come to terms with to protect herself and her children. The attorney for the children is here, Mr. Vespatev. I'd like him to say a few words.
You know, folks, I just want to say something. First of all, do you find this a little bit unusual that civil attorneys, and that's what they are, civil attorneys are holding a press conference in regards to filing a notice of claim against the Suffolk County Police? Is that a little bit unusual? Yeah, you bet it is. If they the case didn't have this notoriety, first of all, would anyone show up from the press? No, of course they wouldn't. But what is the purpose of civil attorneys mentioning certain things like the soundproof room. That has nothing to do with their lawsuit. That the existence or non-existence of that soundproof room. You know, when he mentions they broke the pipes, they went through the traps, all that has to do with their lawsuit. But again, would they be holding a press conference on a notice of claim against a municipality if it wasn't this case? The other thing is they're civil attorneys. So you'll see later on in the press conference, they're asked certain things about the criminal case and they swear to know nothing about it. But where does the civil case and the legal case end and begin? You know, those are some of the questions that I have. And it's interesting to listen. And this is, his name is Ves Matev. He's the attorney for the Heuermann children.
Thank you all very much for coming. As you know, my firm represents the two children, Victoria and Christopher. They'd also like to say thank you to the public that's come out, to the donations, the people that have sent care packages, the people that have sent money, the people that have stopped by and given them well wishes. And we've spoken, I think, in the press for the last few days about why and how it's so important that this family has competent and capable legal representation. And Mr. Macedonio and his firm and my firm, obviously, we're going to keep doing that because they have, as we've said before, rights and liberties that need to be protected. Okay, they all have that. ASA has that. The children have that. As this investigation continues, obviously the district attorney's office is releasing new information every day. It's going to be a very long process. So what they're asking you all to keep in mind that it's going to be a marathon. It's not a sprint. This is going to continue. This case is going to be a very long time in the making. And through that process, obviously, we've talked about in the past few days that the law requires them, in order to preserve those legal rights and remedies, to file certain legal documents at certain intervals. If they don't do that, they will have waived those rights in the public forum. So we are...
Folks, they have 90 days to file suit against a municipality. It's not rocket science. He's making it sound like it is. It's not. They have 90 days to file a lawsuit.
At this point, announcing that the children and Ms. Ellerup, on her behalf, are going to be protecting those legal rights and remedies by filing what's called a notice of claim. That notice of claim is going to be filed within the next 30 days, and that obviously is a legal prerequisite to filing a lawsuit, and it has to be done because otherwise those rights are waived. And that's what's going to happen. When it happens, obviously we'll let you all know, we'll let you folks know what the content of it is, but that's the announcement that we have to make. In closing, I'd like to echo my colleagues' statements. At this time, the family again requests truly and honestly that their rights and liberties have to be protected. And a part of that, again, is that the focus is on their basic needs, their food, their water, their shelter, their clothing, okay? And that's their paramount concern right now. It is those basic human needs that all of us have that have been ripped apart from them. So we ask you again, please respect their privacy. Please know that they're going through a horrific emotional time that none of us could imagine. And let the legal process run its course. Thank you. It's Vess, V-E-S-S, last name is Matev, M-I-T-E-V.
You know, I'm going to get back to some of this, but one of the really unusual things about this that the connections to this, and I'm going to play the video. And of course, Duty Ron told me about this last night. Prior to him going on the show, doing his show last night, Johnny Ray, an attorney for Shannan Gilbert and her family. So you're talking, he's been around for 12, 13 years involved in this case. He goes on Cuomo, Chris Cuomo's show on News Nation, and lets go of a bombshell. And if it's not true, I think he as an attorney has a serious problem, you know. But let me play it, and you're going to see what it is. And the other thing is, the attorney we just saw speaking, Ves Matev, he was an associate. We worked with Johnny Ray. Almost like, this is crazy. How is he working the civil side? And this Ves Matev now, Johnny Ray is letting this bombshell go. It's just an incredible thing. Well, let me play it and you can decide. But it's again, Duty Ron played it last night. It was breaking news last night. And let's take a listen to it.
Joins me now. Counselor, thank you Miss. Appreciate you taking the opportunity.
Sure.
You said these things very vehemently, but not only do we not have proof of what you're suggesting, the authorities say otherwise. They say that the wife was not in town at the time and that they do not believe the wife was aware of what was going. What do you know that they don't?
Well, several things I know. And they said that. I don't say now that they still say that. They said that at the very beginning of this investigation, but other things have developed. I have a witness, a very credible witness, who I spent many hours with to interview. And from that witness, as well as from the circumstances of this case, I know that Mrs. Ellerup is conning the public right now with this press conference and the rest that she pulled off to say that she's in need of money. She is not. And furthermore, she is complicit in her husband's solicitation and use of sex workers in his home over the course of years.
Boom. My God, there's a bombshell. And again, Vesmetev, the attorney we just saw, who's representing Victoria Heuermann and Christopher Shannan, the children of Rex and Essa Ellerup, he's an associate of Johnny Ray. So it's like, and guys, if you doubt that, just go on Google and Google, is Vesmetev an associate of attorney Johnny Ray? And there's pictures of them together, working cases together all over the internet. So I'm not just making this up. So to me, this was pretty damn strange. And so is this allegation, because again, the police, Rodney Harrison, the Suffolk County Police Commissioner, said, we don't suspect Essa Ellerup or the children had any knowledge of this. I would, of course, like to know what was the extent of their questioning. Now, guess what? They can't be questioned, as we know, all you true crime aficionados, because they have counsel. They both have attorneys. Unless the attorneys agreed, which most attorneys worth their salt would never allow it, if the attorneys agreed to have them questioned in their presence. But I don't see it. And again, these attorneys are civil attorneys. And if we watch the rest of that press conference yesterday, they deny any knowledge of the criminal case whatsoever.
Many of them. And she, in this tiny little home where she lived, and he lived, she was upstairs when he would be downstairs having sex with these prostitutes. And he spent enormous amounts of money on them. And it was a regular thing that happened. And she's now, after 27 years of marriage, in the age of computers and cell phones, when you know where everybody is at all times, didn't know about what her husband was up to downstairs. That's just nonsense. There's 2 out of the 3 hairs that are found on the wrappings of the bodies are hers. That alone puts her in the circle of suspicion.
Boom. That does not put her in the circle of suspicion. We've spoken about that on this show numerous times. There's something called transfer evidence, right? And Rex Heuermann, if he had, let's say the sex workers were in his house, there's one way transfer evidence could have gotten on them. The other thing is, say they were not in the house, but Rex Heuermann's burlap bags were in the house. Rex Heuermann is in the house. It's easy for him to transfer, in this case, hairs from his wife onto the burlap bags or onto the body. So it doesn't automatically implicate her. So, and I'm surprised that Johnny Ray, being an attorney with 41 years experience, he champions later on, doesn't know that. I'm sure he does know it, but he's using it as pretending he doesn't know it because he's trying to prove a point.
Suspicion. And if the police come out and said, as they did, well, she had an alibi, well, maybe not once we start to study these cases a lot more carefully. But she was complicit, as you heard me say.
Forensic.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I hear what you're saying, counselor. I just want, no, not at all. Just want to put some meat on the bones of this, because it's such a sensitive and damaging thing to say, because, you got this family that may be as traumatized as anybody else. What I have heard from not just the perspective of authorities, but the forensic experts, is if he had these victims in the house, it's not surprising that you would find DNA from the wife or hair from the wife. It's her house. But how do you know that she was, as you say, complicit in his activity with sex workers? Who is this witness that you have who would know something like that?
I have a witness who has refused to identify herself publicly at this time. I just spoke with her very recently, and she is a very, very credible witness. I say that from 40, I pull rank, I guess, is how I'm making the argument. I know that can be a fallacy, but it also could be truthful. And that is that in my 41 years of experience as a trial attorney and litigator, I tested her using the usual tests for truth, and she tested out fine. So I'm perfectly willing to share.
When do the rest of us get to?
Pardon me?
When do the rest of us get to meet this person and test their credibility and what they have to offer?
That's her choice. And right now, she's held me back from doing that. However, she does exist, and she's real, and it stands to reason as well. What she tells me is completely consistent with the obvious. And it's the utterly improbable that she didn't know about what his shenanigans were in that house for all those years. It's just ridiculous. And she's,
all right, John Ray,
she's out there.
I appreciate you making the case. Anytime you want to come on with her or offer anything else, obviously you should go to the authorities first. I'm not suggesting otherwise. That's what matters most here. But you got a platform here to make the case. I've heard the accusation. I'd love to hear the proof. Okay?
Yeah, of course. And keep in mind that she's raised $44,000 in her GoFundMe account. She's not a victim. She is not a victim, nor are the other two adults that live with her victims. The victims are all dead.
Understood. But just because they weren't murdered doesn't mean they haven't been victimized by this situation. Their lives are colored forever for their connection to Rex Heuermann if these charges are sustained. All right, I got to jump. To be continued. To be continued, Mr. Ray. We'll speak again. All right.
So quite a bombshell. I mean, how many? I just like to be take a little poll here. How many people think that the attorney Johnny Ray is telling the truth? And if you think he's telling the truth, that he really does have this witness, put a 1 in the chat. If you think this is highly incredible, put a 2 in the chat. I'm just interested to seeing what your take on this is, because I find it, first of all, Johnny Ray has been representing the family of Shannan Gilbert since she disappeared. Who's paying him? The family has no money. In fact, quite recently, in the last couple of years, one of the daughters murdered the mother. So Johnny Ray is doing this all for publicity. He's not getting paid. Who's paying him? The family has no money, and he's a private attorney. So it's I don't know if it why is he going to the media and not to the police exactly? If this witness truly exists, well, it's possible that she could be going to the police. We don't know. But we've heard several times, not just Rodney Harrison, but also Ray Tierney, the Suffolk District Attorney, say they believe that she had no knowledge of this. So we have to go at this point what we're being told. But now, if witnesses come out of the woodwork, and then there's other evidence that shows that Asa Ellerup was in fact in town in times that Rex Heuermann allegedly committed these murders, then we have a whole different look at this case, don't we? Then I don't think everyone that is so sympathetic towards Asa Ellerup would be so. And I'm not saying what Johnny Ray is saying is even remotely true. He's been working for 12 years. It's an old expression. He's never saw a camera he didn't like. Every time there's news cameras around, he's somewhere. He's been on all of the documentaries on this case. You see him all over, because again, he's not getting paid in money. So he's getting paid perhaps in publicity. And as I mentioned earlier, the amazing thing is this attorney right here, Vesmetev, he's an associate of Johnny Ray, and he's taking the civil part of it. It's a little bit baffling to me.
Again, that will be set forth in the notice of claim, but clearly it's going to be preserving the rights against law enforcement investigations and officials and investigators that were present at the scene. That's standard. Again, I wouldn't ask that you read into it too much, but that notice of claim is going to be filed. It's a legal prerequisite to filing a lawsuit, which they have.
They're suing the police department. Come on, yeah, there's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo. They got 90 days. The police department is the entity that allegedly wrecked the house. Notice of claim, we're suing. We want damages for it. I mean, I don't know why he's hiding behind the notice of claim. Just tell them what it is. I mean, I think all of these news reporters perhaps are smart enough to figure it out. Yeah, they're suing the police department. It's like they got to have it spelled out for them. And this guy's doing his, he's impressing us with his law school words.
Have to file in order to preserve their rights.
Is the Nassau County Police Department involved in wrecking the house?
At this point in time, we're not sure what law enforcement were involved in actually entering the premises and which were involved with securing the streets and that. So we'll file the notice of claim. It'll probably list all the agencies. And then once the investigation's done, we'll narrow it down and see if there's any kind of lawsuit that can be proceeded after that.
Well, how would you describe the condition of the house when you saw it after the search?
It was piled floor to ceiling with debris that was just taken out of the attics, of every closet, every inch of the house. There was a path probably a foot or two wide to get from the front door to the kitchen, and that was the way through the house.
You know, I think there was a really good possibility that Rex Heuermann was a hoarder, because when the police commissioner, the Suffolk County Police Commissioner, Rodney Harrison, was questioned about this, he said, right from Jump Street, the house was quite cluttered. When a cop says that, believe me, the house is beyond. And you notice they show a picture of the house from about 5 Christmases ago, which, that's a long time ago. They're showing it, how neat and clean it was.
The children and Asa were sleeping on really foam mats on the floor next to the dog bed where the dog was sleeping also. In addition, I forgot to mention, there were 3 cats that were taken when the police executed the search warrant, taken to the animal shelter, local town of Oyster Bay animal shelter, which was going to euthanize them if they were not picked up by a certain time. We had those cats removed, voluntarily transported out to the Bayou in West Hampton, and they're going to be maintained there until they're adopted out by loving families.
I love that. I love that the attorney. Let's bring up animals and let's get sympathy through the 3 cats were going to be euthanized. It would have been a catastrophe. I had to use that joke. Sorry, but it's amazing. They're soliciting, sympathy for the 3 cats. Don't forget that, as I said, they're soliciting sympathy for 3 cats, but yet this is a serial killer's home we're talking about. Let's just bring everyone back down to earth when we listen to these civil attorneys.
The only thing his family knows about these charges is what's been reported in the media. They have not discussed it with him. They haven't addressed it with him, and that's our instructions to them now. We haven't had that conversation. Frankly, it doesn't matter. I need to get Asa back to being mentally healthy, to protect herself and her own children. She has to repair this for at least the next couple of years before this case is litigated in the courts.
Have they been interviewed by law enforcement yet?
She has not visited him in the jail.
Have they been interviewed by law enforcement yet?
No, they have not. We have not been contacted.
Voluntarily gave DNA according to did they consult with you about that?
That was prior to our representation if it happened, and we have not been consulted or contacted by law enforcement. Let me reiterate. Asa or the children are not suspects in this. I think the DA's office and the law enforcement has made that clear. They've stated on several occasions they were out of the jurisdiction when these alleged crimes took place. So she is not a suspect. She's not been questioned. She's not been accused of anything, of being an accomplice or any part associated with whatever her husband's accused of.
How is it possible your client didn't know what was going
Suffolk
on?
County has proven to frame people. Do you think there's any possibility that Rex Heuermann has been framed?
So I'm not even going to address it. I'm not the law enforcement. I trust they're going to do their job diligently.
There's a future 60 Minutes reporter, yelling out from the scene to 2 civil attorneys.
And professionally. So I
You
don't.
just admitted they're lying.
Mr. Macedonio, how do you explain your client not having any knowledge of what was going on?
Okay, you're assuming that all the allegations are true. So if the assumption of your question are true, he lived a complete double life. One of the photos that was released to you that you'll have momentarily will show the house at Christmas time with a Christmas tree and stockings hung by the fireplace at the alleged same time he's alleged to have gone out and committed these serial murders and buried the girls in Gilgo. So if it happened, it was a complete double life. I assure you she knew nothing about it. They have been released already. You should have them. Your agency should all have them. They were sent out.
You were talking about the drain pipes have been taken out, that they're sleeping on the floor. Basically, yes. Is there running water in the home? How can they?
The water is running, but the drain pipes. If you run the water, the sink just drops down and goes right down to the basement. There's no. The plumbing has been repaired, or at least the sink's been repaired. Working on the tub as we speak.
And you say she hasn't visited.
I have not spoken to investigators at all. Not at all.
Are there any appointments made?
No. No. No.
If there was, would they be reaching out?
They have not reached out to us, so I can't assume what they would be doing. I'm sure they're running a professional investigation. I understand the grand jury is still impaneled, so that's their function, and we have not been reached out by them at all.
Have you talked to Onset about the fact that DNA was at the
well, I think it's what's been said. They say a hair of her likeness was at the crime scene. I don't think they said DNA of hers was at the crime scene. So we
potentially they say her hair.
Of her likeness of hair. So I don't think the DNA has been proven to be hers at the crime scene. Sure.
We talked about how Asa is doing and she's recovering from cancer.
Again, this attorney right here, his name is Ves Mitev, and he's an associate of Johnny Ray. In fact, they work together. And again, as I said, go on the internet, go on Google and say, is Ves Mitev an associate of attorney Johnny Ray? And you'll see pictures of them working together all over the internet.
Can you talk a little bit about how Victoria and Christopher are handling all of this?
Sure. Before that, I just want to piggyback off something Mr. Macedonio just said, and this goes back maybe 2 days, but this DNA order that was cut, okay, that's a very standard order in any kind of criminal prosecution. This was a order that was going to be granted no matter what, okay? Anytime you have a case involving DNA evidence, a buccal swab is quite standard. State of, the laws of the state of New York are that you can be required, subject to your constitutional limitations, to provide what's called non-testimonial evidence, hair, materials, DNA. So that order was completely pro forma. I understand it was reported in the media as this groundbreaking, earth-shaking moment in the case, but it's not.
When they first became apprised of Essa Ellerup's DNA, they got it by collecting it surreptitiously, by removing bottles from their garbage pail. And they were able to identify female DNA that happened to be Asa Ellerup's. That DNA was compared against the hair fibers that they found on the bodies in the apparently on the burlap bags. So there were several steps to this, and then at some point, they probably requested a buccal swab. That's the inside. I'm not a dentist, but that's the inside of your cheek. And they swab it with a Q-tip, and it gets cheek cells that contain DNA, and that's how they get it. And just recently, Rex Heuermann was ordered by a judge to submit to a buccal swab. So now they have the DNA right from the source, not from a bottle, or in the case of Rex Heuermann, initially they got it from the pizza crust, as you recall. So directly from the source.
It could get cut in every case, and if it wasn't ordered, it would have been immediately created an appealable issue. So back to your question, obviously, they're, as we've said before, every moment that they spend in this waking, surreal nightmare, they have to keep reevaluating where they are, okay? Their valuables were shattered, their beds were destroyed, the places that they let their heads down at night no longer exist. The reason that they spend so much time outside and why you folks photograph them on the porch is because they can't be inside. The house is in shambles. It's ransacked. It was run over through roughshod. Okay, so it's not as if they don't want to be inside their house, but the conditions inside are deplorable, and they were left in a deplorable condition. So how are they doing? Again, we go back to what we need as humans. We need food, water, clothing, shelter, a roof over our heads, a place to lay our heads down at night. All of those things they were deprived of summarily, without any warning. And every day that goes by, again, kindness of strangers, we appreciate that. They help get back a little bit of normalcy. but it's not going to be enough. Every dollar counts. Obviously, we have a long way to go. It's not going to be enough today. It's not going to be.
You know, folks, I don't think any one of us, being human beings that are reasonable and human beings that have a soul, and none of us wish anything bad to happen to Esther Ellerup and her children. Uh, but I think many people are waiting to see, was there any involvement? I think that would change the scope of this if there, in fact, she somehow was. But we have to go with the police, and they said she's not. So I don't know if we can really take attorney Johnny Ray's word as anywhere close to truth. I think we have to take it from the authorities.
Be enough tomorrow. It's not going to be enough for months, maybe years. So in order to piece back what's been crumbled into a million pieces is going to take a very long time, and they need all that, and that's what humans need.
A murder case with multiple victims, is now the appropriate time to talk about the condition of Heuermann's house?
It's absolutely the appropriate time to talk about the condition of Heuermann's house and children. Again, they're innocent bystanders in this, and that's, again, we cannot stress that enough because of what has happened here, and it's of unimaginable magnitude. They're caught up in this. They're victims just as much. They disagree, or you might consider that there were horrific things that are alleged to have been happened, but an allegation and a conviction are quantum leaps apart. So yes, they are victims, and yes, they are innocent bystanders, and yes, their lives have been completely upended and turned upside down.
Can you speak about the relationship between the children and Rex? Were they close? They have like memory vacation, and if so, like where did they go?
Again, I appreciate the question and thank you for it. We're not here to talk about that today. We're here to give you an update, disseminate some new photos, which I think will give you a better idea. A picture's worth 1,000 words, obviously, as to what the house was, what their life was like, and those pictures as well. But we're not going to talk about that. And obviously to announce that we are going to be exercising their legal rights and remedies by filing the notice. Thank you.
Has Allison called her husband?
Sorry, you cannot call the jail. The jails have to be outgoing only from the jail. So
Have
there's
they
no.
spoken over the phone?
It's spoken over the phone. Yeah, like I've stated, all those jail calls are recorded. So we've instructed her, and I'm sure his attorneys instructed him not to discuss the facts of the case. It just doesn't benefit either party.
So he's called her.
That's the only way the call could happen.
Has Officer Ellerup explained to you a reason for filing for divorce?
Of course, I discussed that with her, and at some point in time, she'll make a statement on why she feels it was appropriate to do that.
Did she give you any information?
Okay, Johnny Ray is trying to keep himself relevant in this case. He has a victim, and he's been on TV for the last 10 years trying to get.
Look at the attorney, Vesmetev, who works with Johnny Ray. Look at that. We used to call that. I'm going to replay it back. Look at the smirk he has. We used to call that a shit-eating grin.
Did she give you any information?
Okay, Johnny Ray is trying to keep himself relevant in this case. He has a victim, and he's been on TV for the last 10 years trying to get any kind of press he can on this and make himself relevant in this case. I can assure you, Asa Ellerup and her 2 children are not suspects in this case. They shouldn't be suspects in this case. I wholeheartedly trust the DA's investigation that eliminated them. So I don't know what Johnny Ray's purpose is in doing that, but like I said, trying to keep himself relevant in this matter.
And you told that they're not suspects in this case. What can you say about how they're assisting in the investigation?
They're not assisting at all. We've never been contacted.
Is there any desire to do that? Once you're not suspect, would they want to go above and beyond to help?
Again, if this happened, it was a complete double life. They have no information to provide. Again, they're not suspects. They haven't been questioned. I do not believe they have any relevant information, or they would have been questioned already.
Folks, there's no doubt that the police questioned them when they first made the arrest. Whether or not Asa Ellerup invoked counsel, we don't know if that occurred, but that the police would not have missed the opportunity, for example, to question Asa Ellerup as to some of the information already had through the burner phones. They knew, and through their financials, they knew that when Rex had called the sex workers, and we know through their financials and further checks when she left the country, when she was out of town, which seemed to be, it would correspond with when he met with sex workers. Now, there's been no confirmation by either law enforcement or anyone else that he brought any of these sex workers back to his home. There's absolutely no confirmation. Would it make sense that he would, especially if his wife was out of town and his children out of town? Yeah, it makes sense. But we can't, unless the police let us know that all of the potential evidentiary matter that they took into custody from the home comes back with forensic evidence from the victims. At this point, no one is telling us that the victims were brought to the home. We don't know that yet. We absolutely don't know. And again, this case is very early. There's, they made 3 indictments on this case, and there's one more expected, but they're going to take their time because Rex Heuermann isn't going anywhere. So, when they talk about the Gilgo 4, we have Maureen Brainard-Barnes, Melissa Bartolome, Amberlynn Costello, and Megan Waterman. And the 3 that he's been charged with are Melissa Bartolome, Amberlynn Costello, and Megan Waterman. So we're waiting for Maureen Brainard-Barnes for that case to come down and for them to charge Rex Heuermann with that. But again, there is no rush. Rex Heuermann is going nowhere. He is never going to get bailed. So he's in for the long haul here. And as we know, he's been charged with 3 counts of murder in the first degree and 3 counts of murder in the second degree, with a 4th potentially being charged real soon. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. If you want to support us financially, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels, and we also have a channel members YouTube channel. You see the folks in the green font. They're part of our YouTube channel member family, and we really appreciate all our friends and YouTube channel members. So, this case is going nowhere. And again, these guys here, Robert Mazzadonio and Ves Matev, they're civil attorneys. So they're looking out. Again, they spoke about in legalese about the notice of claim, basically fancy wording for that they're suing the police for wrecking the house.
Complete double life.
You want to ask about the notice of claim?
We haven't gotten to that discussion. We don't know what he told his lawyer. Like again, she hasn't had that conversation with him, and we instructed her not to.
Want to go back to the notice of claim for a second?
Yeah, she has not even asked. We told her to ignore all that, ignore the media reports, things that are reported in the media. A soundproof room. Everybody reported that. That is not true. So everybody ran with that story that he had this sex dungeon downstairs in his house with a soundproof room where he was bringing prostitutes and murdering them and then burying them on Gilgo Beach. There is no soundproof room in that house. So we cannot believe everything's been reported in the media. We've told her that and instructed her that she get herself mentally healthy, and so she can be there for her children who are suffering through this.
So the notice of claim, what are the grounds for that? Can you tell us what you're going to be alleging in that?
There are certain rights they have to protect within a 90-day period for notice of claim, the property damage that was done. If you don't file that notice of claim within 90 days, you lose the right to pursue it at a later date. So we're just going to protect those. It's just going to protect those rights, and that's it. Whether or not a lawsuit will be pursued will be addressed later on. But you have to file a notice of claim within the 90-day period, or you waive it.
And do we know the nature of the phone calls between you and
No, I do not. Okay.
In your opinion, has the civil rights of this family been violated?
If my opinion, I didn't think they were, we would not be filing a notice of claim. Okay. Thank you.
So, there you have it. Notice of claim. They're suing, of course, they're suing for monetary damages. They're not suing because their rights were violated. They want money. Let's put it as succinctly and as to the point as we can. I want to play a little bit more of Johnny Ray so you get a little bit of more of a picture of who this man is and how he's been on. As I said, he's never seen a camera that he didn't like. Here he is on Law and Crime. Let's just watch a little bit of this.
Out to Long Island?
Yes, Michael Pack is an escort driver. That's what he does. He takes the place of the old-fashioned pimp, and he drives her in her SUV from Manhattan after midnight out to Oak Beach. It is highly unlikely that he, who is very concerned with money, every penny of money, would have taken that trip using the gas all the way out to Suffolk County in the pitch of the night for a small amount of money, and to have made that arrangement all by telephone and trusted that he would have been paid. That doesn't make any sense. What does make sense is that this was a prearranged meeting, and the more details than that we do not know, and the police haven't discovered. So
Wait.
what happened is,
Let me follow up on that, because I want to make sure I'm following you here. Are you saying a prearranged meeting, something beyond the time she spent with Brewer?
something else was arranged. Certainly Brewer was involved in it, but for Shannan to travel all the way out with Pack in that SUV would not ordinarily have occurred unless there was a prearranged meeting and there was a fairly good sum of money involved. Remember that Shannan normally has 2-hour trysts, and this tryst lasted for 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours. So according to Brewer and or Pack, they claim that, well, she agreed to do extra time once she got out there. That's not likely either, especially because Brewer has claimed publicly a number of times that when Shannan arrived, he didn't want to have anything to do with her because she looked like a man and he wouldn't have any kind of relations with her. He claimed that. That's hogwash. And so there are lies being told about the whole thing by these people who were involved. And these lies have never been pursued by the police in any capacity. Nonetheless, Brewer is the guy and who allegedly hires her. And when she gets there at some point, she and you won't hear it on the tape, but before the tape, she and Brewer leave the home of Brewer and drive in Brewer's car. We don't know exactly where, but the claim is that they went to go to a CVS to pick up certain items and then bring them back. That's not likely, but that's what is said. But both Pack and Brewer claim that they left with Shannan earlier, and the telephone records we have support that point. And then they came back, Brewer and Shannan, to Brewer's home.
So that's attorney Johnny Ray, who's been involved in this case for about 12 years. And I don't know who pays him or if he gets paid, period, because obviously Shannan Gilbert is deceased. Her mother was murdered by her other daughter. So I don't know if Johnny Ray or John Ray, this attorney, has ever gotten paid. So then why would you might ask, well, then why is he doing it? Perhaps the notoriety, to be in the public eye, to get all this free publicity, and maybe at another time, another date, all this publicity will serve him well and get him other clients. That's all I can figure out, is that he would he's doing it for the notoriety, because clearly he's not getting paid. This week was also they discovered another body that was missing from years and years ago, and I wanted to play. I want to play a little bit of this from Law and Crime, and this is a woman who actually owns Arthrim Labs. And let me play a little bit of this. I think you'll really appreciate this. If I can.
Her legs found on Fire Island years prior. But recently, officials in Suffolk County on Long Island sent DNA from the remains to Othram Labs in Texas. Othram works with law enforcement officials to identify remains and help solve cold cases. Othram used genetic genealogy to identify Karen Vergata. Suffolk County officials haven't said whether they believe Vergata's murder is connected to the Gilgo Four. Rex Heuermann is a 55-year-old architect from Massapequa Park. He faces charges in the murders of 3 of the Gilgo Four. He's pleaded not guilty to the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Amber Costello, and Megan Waterman. The DA says he is the prime suspect in the murders of Maureen Brainard-Barnes. Heuermann insists through his attorney that he didn't do this and that he's innocent. Joining me to discuss the technology used to identify Karen Vergata, the Fire Island Jane Doe, is Kristen Middleman. She's the Chief Development Officer with Othram Labs. Othram helped identify the Fire Island Jane Doe and has worked on other cases across the country. We've featured them in other cases before as well.
Folks, this is Kristen Middleman, and she is a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology. And her husband own Othram Labs. And Othram Labs is probably the premier lab in the nation that does the investigative genetic genealogy, which would involve the SNP technique, which they refer to as SNPs, and it stands for single nucleotide polymorphism. And it's an amazing, I mean, she's a brilliant woman, and her husband are the ones, again, that own Othram Labs.
Kristen, thanks for coming on to Sidebar. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I want to start at the beginning with this because this testing is different from your typical DNA testing. Of course, you have to have a DNA profile to do what you do. But you guys use a different type of profile to do the investigative genetic genealogy. It's called a SNP, if I am saying that right. So tell us how you really start at the beginning and go about building these family trees and everything like that off of a DNA profile, an STR profile that you later, I guess, I don't know, develop another type of profile for.
Absolutely. So standard forensic testing that's been used for 30 years, DNA testing that has gone to court all this time, is known as STR testing. There you're looking at 20 STR markers and you're comparing them to the known database of perpetrators that is owned by the FBI, CODIS. So sometimes you guys may have heard that as CODIS testing. If someone is in the known perpetrator database, then you have a direct hit. But your DNA would have to be in there, or maybe the DNA of your child, like a direct familiar relationship. What we do is we build profiles that have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of markers, up to 1 million markers. So these profiles have all of these SNP markers that you just discussed. And when you upload those to genealogical databases consented for law enforcement use, you're able to get really distant relationships. The more markers you have, the more distant relationships you can actually reach. And so you can get a 6th cousin, a 5th cousin, a 4th cousin, and all of us are related to some degree. Most areas in the United States, they were founded from a few key families. And so to some degree, there'll be some relative in there. And they're not the relatives.
You know, this stuff to me, and I think anyone in the true crime community, is fascinating. And here's this brilliant, brilliant woman explaining it in the way that we, the lay people, can understand it. And I think she's doing a great job.
To come home for Thanksgiving with you, not the relatives that you know or you would call, but there would be some match in these databases. Then our genealogists go in, our genealogy team, just like you said, and they look at these matches and they figure out who the most recent common ancestor is on a tree. And then they build the tree back down until the puzzle piece that the person that we're trying to identify fits right into a family tree. At that point, we return that lead back to investigators and they contextualize it within their investigation.
So let's talk about Karen Vergata, because we know that part of her remains, it's so gruesome and grisly, it's sad.
Folks, I'm just going to answer this question. Mary Michael, thanks for the $9.99 super sticker. Sergeant Bill, what's your take on this important, credible witness is going to Johnny Rat and not the investigators. Police first strikes me as shady. You know, Mary, I believe that too. I mean, I don't know the work of Johnny Ray as an attorney, but I do know that for 12 years, he's never missed a camera. He's never missed a meeting on this Gilgo case. He's been in every single documentary. And I don't know, again, who's paying him? There's no money. He must be doing this just for the publicity. So, right, I think if this witness is true and is credible, then she should come forward to the police.
Her legs and feet were located in one area in a plastic bag on Fire Island, but then her skull was located much later than that. So you may have had a better DNA sample to work with from the remains from the legs, but maybe not the skull so much. So tell us where you began with that. Obviously, you took her DNA and did your work.
Yes, we took the remains and we extracted DNA, and then we proceeded to do forensic grade genome sequencing. That's this technique where we do a feasibility analysis before we consume the DNA, because sometimes when you're dealing with perpetrator cases, you only have a finite amount of DNA in the tube. And if you consume it, all DNA testing, all DNA sequencing is a destructive process. You're actually consuming someone's last chance of getting justice. And so we do this feasibility analysis that allows us to, in advance, predict whether or not we can build one of these profiles with the properties of the DNA found in that sample. Because we've identified and returned leads on over 1,000 cases, and because we've done it all in-house, this has become a truth set. Each case becomes a standard. So we compared the DNA from her case to the previous DNA samples that we have run here at Othram that we know we can successfully build a profile from, and proceeded once we knew that, yes, we could build one of these profiles. Then we did the sequencing, built a profile that had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of markers, and that was uploaded to genealogical databases consented for law enforcement use. And in this case, we worked with the New York office from the FBI, and they actually did the genealogical research to put her back on a family tree.
Okay,
Once they
so
identified her,
go ahead.
they actually called the family and asked if there's someone missing. That's what happens each time. And her father did say that she was missing. They were looking for her, and the last time he had spoken to her was Valentine's Day in 1996.
So I assume then you requested, or the FBI requested, a sample from her father.
That's right. And then there's a confirmation test that confirms our hypothesis that it was her. And so that's what happens each time, whether it.
Folks, just FYI, this is the same lab that did the forensic work, the DNA work in the Brian Koberger, the Idaho quadruple case. So this lab has quite a history of success with this, and pretty amazing.
It's and if a direct relationship isn't available, we can do a kin snip confirmation, which allows you to use a further out relative. But in this case, her father was still alive. In fact, he passed away a few months after finding out what happened to his daughter.
Oh my goodness. So did he feel some sense of peace, or are you able to describe to us or for us how he felt, or his reaction upon learning once and for all where his daughter was located?
Yeah, so what has been reported is that he had been looking for her continuously. It was his only child, and he had hired a private investigator to find her through the years. And maybe he was holding on because after he found out what had happened to her, he was able to pass away, at least knowing the truth. I've met hundreds of families over the last few years doing this job that are missing someone. And I have to say, their life stops the moment when their loved one is gone, or at the moment where they don't know what happened to their loved one or who is responsible. I've met families that live in the same home for 47, 50 years, hoping someone will come back and knock on the door or someone will know where their loved one is. Families that go back to their favorite place weekly, trying to see if maybe they would run into them. Families that go back to the crime scene, hoping they run into the perpetrator. They hire investigators. They get online every day looking for their loved one, and they can't move forward until they know the truth.
As far as Karen goes, uh, did you do any work to see, at least on her legs, or had anybody else done any work on her legs to see if there was other DNA, maybe a swab to see if a perpetrator's DNA could have been on her body parts?
I'm sure. Every time unidentified remains are found, and this is a case, I'm sure that there was work done to see what other DNA was found there as well. But until any of that is announced, until that becomes relevant to an investigation, um, and announced by law enforcement, again, these remains were found decades ago. Othram didn't exist until
Yeah.
2018.
Her remains were obviously preserved enough. The legs were preserved enough to extract the DNA profile. Was it particularly difficult to work with those remains because of the age of them? Even though, they seemed like they were found relatively quickly. In April, she vanishes on February 14th. Was that difficult?
There was contamination that was involved in this case that made it difficult to sequence the correct DNA profile in order to be able to get her identity. But the age of the remains, like I said, we've worked cases that are over 100 years old, so that wasn't the biggest issue here. It was contamination from the surroundings that made this case a little bit more difficult to work with. But it's something that we've done time and time again here at Othram, and what used to be impossible is no longer the exception, it's the rule. It's something that's easy and it works as you go through this process relatively quickly because of those standards that have been built. And so that brings me hope that everyone that's out there nameless right now, every victim that's out there that has DNA, they should have their name back. I think within the next few years, we're going to live in a world where no one goes nameless for decades. No father, no parent is waiting to find out where their loved one is. No one's wondering if their loved one just ran away and doesn't want to be part of their life anymore, if something happened to them. That's that shouldn't happen anymore. This new type of sequencing, um, it is being used now in contemporary investigations. Right after standard DNA sequencing doesn't give you that identity, and with victims, it almost never does because they're not in the known perpetrator database. So you are not getting that answer. It can easily be flipped to forensic grade genome sequencing, and you can infer someone's identity and not have a cold case. Be able to identify that person and give them their name back right away and start the investigation as to what happened to them much sooner, which often leads to being able to get more clues and solve the case faster.
Folks, this is speaking is Christine Middleman. She is a PhD in molecular biology and chemistry, and her and her husband own Othram Labs in Texas. That is one of the most successful investigative genetic DNA labs in the entire nation. Brilliant, brilliant woman, and she so explained this so easily that I think, look, I could understand it, and I thought she did a great job, and I hope that you guys in the chat were listening because it's really unbelievable. This technology is unbelievable, and we may one day live in a world where a rapist, a serial rapist, a serial murder won't exist anymore, and that adopted people can find their families, can find their parents, if they choose to do so. But this technology is just incredible.
I just wanted to go back to Karen just briefly. You said that her father had disclosed that the last time he had spoken with her was on Valentine's Day. Did he ever recall that you're aware of whether or not like what that conversation entailed. I mean, was he aware that she was engaged in this type of work and in being an escort?
He did. In the interview that I read, he said that she had called him from jail and she was very distressed on that last phone call. And so he knew that she was in trouble and had been trying to piece what happened to her afterwards. And he said that she kept in touch. They had a close relationship and she contacted him frequently. So when she stopped contacting him, that was something that was unusual and he didn't feel was something that was because she didn't want to contact him.
Well, Kristen, it's been wonderful talking with you. I've loved.
So guys, that is Kristen Middleman, and I put it in the chat. She is one of the co-owners with her husband of Othram, OTHRAM Labs, one of the most successful genealogical labs in the nation. You heard us speak about. They do a great deal of their work is for the FBI. You know, I would love to get her on the show. She's just, not only is she brilliant, but she's a good speaker also, and she takes things that are undoubtedly not so easy to understand and makes them understandable for us. And for that, I really, I thank her. Folks, I always like to mention, of course, when we do these shows and we do these cases, that there are real victims here. And, you know, we started this show, of course, with the lawsuit for Asa Ellerup and the notice of claim that the attorneys spoke about. Basically, they're suing the Suffolk County Police Department for wrecking the house. But this case is really about the victims. And we know for sure that these are four known as the Gilgo Four. And I always like to mention their names: Maureen Brainard-Barnes, Melissa Bartolome, Amberlynn Costello, and Megan Waterman. I think everything about this case is so interesting. And are there experts on this case? There's people that know a lot more than others, but unless you have that inside seat to an investigation through being a detective or part of the hands-on investigation, access to the case folder, access to all the investigative steps that have been taken over the years with this case, we cannot assume. What do they say? When you assume, you make an ass of you and me. We can't assume anything. These cases rely, of course, on evidence. So conjecture and rumor, none of that stuff. And again, this is the true crime community. This is the YouTube community. I try to report this stuff to you, minus the sensationalism. But sometimes it gets sensational because not everything is coming out as the truth. You know, there are rumor, there are conjecture. Even the police, they're reporting it from their perspective, from their point of view. Over the years, in this case, there's been some bad information coming from the police. Even I was shocked to hear right out of Rodney Harrison's lips that when he first got to Suffolk County, became the police commissioner, he was shocked to find out there was one detective assigned to the Gilgo Beach case. And that detective was still catching other cases. To me, coming from the NYPD, that is shocking. And I'm sure Rodney Harrison was shocked over that. And we've spoken ad nauseum about the creation of this task force, which resulted in identifying the perpetrator after 12, almost 13 years, in the person of Rex Heuermann, the alleged perpetrator. He's been arrested for this. So this is a long ride, and this ride is not over. And I'm happy that you guys have taken this ride thus far with myself, with Duty Ron, and we're going to keep bringing it to you as long as you keep coming to us. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today on this Saturday afternoon. I know Duty Ron went live late last night when that breaking news from Johnny Ray came out with the purported witness saying that Asa Ellerup is totally involved with this. And I don't know if I believe that. And if it's true, then he should come forward with this alleged witness. And if not, it is what it is. Guys, have a great day. Thank you for tuning in. Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.